Well, jeepers! You're listening to Smash or Pass.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another interview on the JayBee and Milly channel. I am JayBee and joining with me is Milly.
Hi.
And we have Sophie.
Hey.
And the special guest who will be interviewing today is Carolyn Gair. Thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
So you've been involved with so many incredible projects, be it TV shows and features. Like when I was going through IMDb, it was like I was having a tour throughout my childhood, essentially. It was incredible. But going back to the early kind of credits for IMDb, I could see that a lot of it was for, design and storyboard artist. But what kind of led you down that path to begin with?
Believe it or not, my mom decided to go back to take art classes in college when I was about 15 years old, and she took art fundamentals. And in art fundamentals is kind of like a buffet where you have a tray and you try a little bit of technical illustration, classical illustration, some ceramics, animation was in there. And she thought it would be kind of fun to include me. So when she had any assignments for the animation class, she would get me to do it as well. And I kept getting better marks than she did. And so she thought that this might be a good career path for me because I was always drawing cartoons in my math book, flip book on the side, somebody's throwing up, somebody's peeing out a window, the normal, stuff. It's always bodily fluids on those little flip books, or violence, I guess. Anyway, I ended up going to animation college in Sheridan in Toronto, which just happened to be 15 minutes away from where I lived, which was great because it's the only animation college in all of Canada. So I took 3 years of classical animation, which was taught by animation directors and not people who worked in the industry. These were all people from National Film Board. So they knew how to teach us how to soup to nuts, make an entire film, record it, do the backgrounds, cut dialogue, animate to it, export it. Well, not export back in the day, because there was no electricity back then. It was basically 16 millimeter film and so on and so forth. But it was tough to get jobs because we didn't know how to fit into the machinery of, say, a TV show. So I started off as an assistant animator, painting cells, and became an animator. And then the animation all seemed to go overseas to Korea and Japan. And so I got into character layout and then storyboard revision, a lot of character design just because it was really necessary depending on, if you can draw, you can design characters. And eventually became a storyboard revision artist. And because I could outthink the board artist who was currently boarding, they just fired him and gave me his job. And I gotta say, as a woman in the animation industry back in the 80s, it felt pretty good to get a guy's job because there weren't a lot of women. All of my girlfriends were all in production. So there's more women in animation now, which is great, but it's still very much a guy's career, I think. Anyway, started storyboarding for Warner Brothers and never looked back.
Wow, I mean, that's a fantastic story. And obviously, it's great to hear that you can see in the work as well, just such a natural talent there. So in regards to kind of growing up, I know you said you kind of took, completed art projects and things and was getting great grades, but was there anything that ever inspired you in terms of watching animated TV shows or movies that kind of wanted you to go along that career path?
Like you wouldn't believe. I mean, Tex Avery is like a god to me. He was the first person to start experimenting with retention of vision. How long does a character's feet blur in the air before you can't see it anymore? And apparently, depending on, like the dog in the Bugs Bunny cartoons, the puppy. We used to rent 16 millimeter films from Warner Brothers Shorts. A couple of friends and I at college. This is what we would do on the weekend. We'd rent a 16 millimeter projector. We'd rent the 16 millimeter film that was actually in Sheridan College's library. And we would frame by frame, like now you could video scrub it, but this is frame by frame, actual frames, to watch how many noses that dog has when he's eating out of the bowl of food. And how retention of vision helps make it look like a lot of noses really, really fast. As long as you came back to one nose within 2 frames, it wouldn't look weird. So Tex Avery was the first inventor of animation timing plus Bugs Bunny. And then every Warner Brothers cartoon after that, I was just in awe of it. What made them endearing. how long to hold a character for to see if they're thinking. And Fleischer with Popeye, back in the day, they never stopped moving. The same thing with Silly Symphonies. You know, every single drawing, there was always another drawing, whereas Warner Brothers would strike a pose and it would feel like that character was more alive because you were watching him think. And I just love Bugs Bunny cartoons because they really push the envelope. Disney cartoons, just a little bit too saccharine for me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually named my son after Tex Avery.
Oh.
But it turns out because they're both related. I mean, they're related to the Judge Roy Bean clan. So do you know who Tex Avery is?
Yes, I mean, we've not done that
Groupie,
much.
they did a lot of World War II propaganda films, Red Hot Cinderella, things like that. Red Hot Riding Hood, The Wolf, you know, a lot of those cartoons, Blitzkrieg Wolf and stuff like that. So a lot of World War II propaganda, but really hilarious cartoons. But Deputy Dog was, I think, his most famous. So my son's name is Avery Bean Taylor, which is named after Tex, Fred Bean Avery. So.
Yeah, he does come up a lot actually when we ask that question. So it's
a big part of kind of everyone's inspiration.
But like I was saying kind of in my introduction, just the projects that you've worked on are directly from what we grew up watching. Like I remember, you know, the Animaniacs, Kim Possible, and with them being quite different, you have the Animaniacs being quite slapstick and Kim Possible being action. Out of your entire filmography, I guess, pre-Trick or Treat Scooby Doo, were there any sequences that you storyboarded that stand out to you as being particularly memorable?
Bruce Block was the director on the second and third season of Kim Possible, and his brother Dave Block runs a visual cinematic. He's written a bunch of books, but he also has seminars. That's the word for it. And we learned the difference between deep canvas and flat canvas, deep space and flat space on Kim Possible. When Kim and Ron Stoppable are talking, say, at the taco place, it's flat proscenium staging so that the comedy and the dialogue really plays. But when Kim Possible is fighting Sheba, you have deep nosebleed shots, lots of ups, lots of downs, so that, you know, there's a lot more excitement with the fight sequences. And this is very much kind of a cinematic language that I learned. It completely changed the way I board. And it helped me decide when I was going to have a fairly uninteresting backdrop and when I was going to have a deep space backdrop with a lot of interest, a lot of depth. And Cowboy Bebop was one of the TV shows, I guess, yeah, it's a TV show that Bruce Block actually used to demonstrate this, plus the use of color. So it was just really life-changing. It's so funny that you mentioned Animaniacs. I just got onto Reddit a little while ago and happened to mention I worked on Animaniacs on one of the posts. And somebody was, please, please, please do an AMA, ask me anything. So for fun, I did. And I got like 500 upvotes. Everybody wanted to know all the backstory of all the Animaniacs stuff. And it was really fun to do a tell-all. But I think my favorite thing working on Animaniacs was Pinky and the Brain, because I knew the two writers they were based on. And I went on to be actually a writer for The Brain on Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. But I learned the most I learned on storyboarding was on Kim Possible. I think it was an incredibly brilliant show. And, I got to meet Draken and all that. And so that was kind of fun. Patrick Warburton is a riot and he's still kind of gorgeous. So it was really, really, really fun.
Oh yeah, there's definitely no disputing the kind of masculine prowess of Patrick Warburton. Definitely just his voice alone. But, like I always admire people like you that have worked on so many amazing things. Like I guess at the stage that I'm at, I'm kind of dreaming of being involved in one iconic project, but then for you to get iconic project after another. And in terms of, I guess, the background and how that might affect you, you did quite a lot of the iconic, I guess, sequels to, stuff like The Jungle Book 2, Cinderella 2, and Brother Bear 2. And in terms of, dealing with films like that, is there any additional pressure from a storyboard perspective, dealing with follow-ups to such beloved, classics, essentially?
Yes, but there's so much reference. I mean, for instance, I mean, Brother Bear 2 was pretty fun to work on because Coda is just such an adorable. These characters are already established, so somebody else has walked around in their suits. We have an idea what their personalities are. We have an idea of what their tells are. And I think that's one of the most challenging things on a movie that is brand new is to figure out the character, because we don't have an actor. We don't have Brad Pitt deciding that he's going to have his hand near his mouth the whole movie, like in 12 Monkeys. He's always got his hand up here. Or in Burn After Reading, he decided he was going to be moving in every single scene. Ocean's 11, he's eating in almost every single scene. Brad Pitt kind of came up with really fun tells for his character that aren't in the script. Whereas when you're storyboarding, especially on animated features that haven't been done before, we're discovering the character, and there's maybe 8 of us climbing into that rubber suit, as I like to say. And we all have to figure out what the tell is. You know what I mean by a tell, what the gestures are, whether they rub their neck like Blue does in the Jungle Book. So the animators had already taken that. And, I got to say, the animators on the classic movies were really the storyboard artists as well. Because this was pen and paper. The story artists would come up with kind of suggestions, but the animators were the ones that set up the scene, set up the staging, decided on the acting. Whereas now, because we're so digital, like, for instance, the factory scene in Scooby Doo, there's over 600 panels that I drew for that. It's basically key animation. And for 2D animators, they're using the storyboard. They're Xeroxing it, basically tracing over it. And the same thing with CG. There'll be anywhere between 300 and 900 panels for one scene, because now the story artists are the actors. So back on Jungle Book, it was pretty easy because we already had brilliant animators that we were pulling our gestures off of, what Mowgli would do, how he would walk, how he would sit. We already had a template for that. And when I worked on Dumbo 2, which was a movie crying out not to be made, as I like to say, I was able to actually storyboard the scene where Dumbo and his mom were having a really tender moment. And it was such a joy to be able to draw the trunk caressing Dumbo's face as the mother is making him feel better and consoling him. To be able to board the tenderness that I grew up with watching on the big screen, it was really an honor to be able to recreate that kind of an emotional moment, because it's up to the board artist more than anything to create these emotional moments. In Lilo and Stitch, in 101 Dalmatians, they decide to have I forget the dogs' names, but when they wanted to show real misery and sadness, they would show a character by themselves so that the audience's heart goes out towards that character. So like when Stitch says, "I'm lost," and he is lost, it's such an emotional moment because there's nobody there to console him. And it's up to the board artists. I remember on in the Disney book, The Illusion of Life, they were trying to figure out how the little girl gets consoled. I forget what movie it is. It's with a cat. There's an old cat. It's a little girl. It's a weird movie, but the board artists staged it about 8 different ways until they found the loneliest way possible, which was a little girl at an orphanage sitting on the end of her bunk, facing away from camera in the corner with just the light of the window on her, as opposed to facing camera in your face kind of emotions. So as board artists, we also have to pull from the past and pull from our own experiences and then find things that make us laugh and make us cry. It's a very emotional process, believe it or not, which is why I prefer features over TV, because I like being able to experience the emotional roller coaster ride, or at least see whether or not I can take my audience on it. And the fun thing about the Scooby Doo High Rise was putting a little more emotion in there. We gave Velma a really powerful moment when she has self-doubt. And it was fun working with the board artist on that, because I had a certain way I really wanted to be able to squeeze the emotions out of it, because we don't normally see a lot of emotions from characters in Scooby-Doo. I think I may have answered more than your question. Sorry.
No, it's always fascinating to just be able to sit back and listen, because we learn so much, and like we can see that you've just worked with so many iconic characters, which just kind of adds to the fact that you working on Trick or Treat, it was, I'd say most people would agree, one of the best Scooby movies of the last decade at least. And the just skill that everybody had behind the scenes goes to, you know, really show why it was exactly that. And of course, we're always delighted to hear about anything haunted high-rise eyes, and we're looking forward to hearing more about that as well. Certainly, you know, to have like the scene you're describing there where Velma was displaying emotion certainly is something that we don't always get to see. So I'm sure that would have been absolutely amazing. But I guess kind of moving on to the first Scooby movie, to Trick or Treat, the first of the two, you were the storyboard artist for that. So what was it like? How did it kind of come about working on that project?
The producer and I had worked on Stillwater, which is the children's panda TV show. So Joe Goyette was a producer on that, and I was one of the lead board artists on Stillwater. I did a lot of the I forget what they're called, the little shorts at the beginning, or the stories that the panda tells. I forget I think there's a word for it. Anyway, they're just the little 5-minute shorts inside the stories when Stillwater is telling a backstory of something. And those are unscripted. So I was able to, you know, we call it working off the page, which means there's no pages. You just come up with the ideas. And so Joe knew I brought, you know, kind of a cinematic look to stuff, and I was available.
Well, we're certainly grateful that you were, because like we said, certainly within at least it's one of the best of the last 10 years, genuinely. So
I love the movie. The script was fantastic. Audie is a hilarious writer. I mean, he brought a lot to it. Both scripts were great. I really think The Haunted High Rise was even funnier than the first, because we had the goth chicks and hex girls, not the goth chicks, the hex girls, and songs. And it was just like, we pulled out all the stops, and that motorcycle chases through the hallways. Oh my God.
I can't even begin to imagine how amazing that movie genuinely sounds. And I mean,
you know what it was? It was the ability to do up shots and down shots. Whenever you see Scooby Doo, it's proscenium staging with the same background going behind it. So to be able to release the Kraken, so to speak, with deep space and wide shots and thunder and lightning and curtains flying in the breeze. I mean, that's just like a meal to me. I just love being able to make it as powerful as possible.
It certainly sounds like it would have been. And I think one of the most powerful movies about most powerful things about Trick or Treat, and I imagine it would have been High Rise as well, is just how it feels like it was made by somebody who genuinely really cared about the franchise. I mean, is Scooby something that you were familiar with before you began work on Trick or Treat?
I like to tell people that I managed to, this is what I was telling Joe when he hired me. I said, I've managed to avoid working on a Scooby Doo movie almost my entire career, and now this. And he says, well, we were going to get you one way or another. No, of course. I was raised on Scooby Doo. I was always so disappointed that it was Mr. McPherson, you know, and he would have gotten away with it. It's always somebody in a mask. And I was always like, just once, please be a ghost or something paranormal, because I love ghosts. I love paranormal. If you look at my YouTube channel, all it is just creepypasta stuff. So I like being scared. I don't like being terrorized, but I like being scared. And the fun of the Scooby-Doo movies that Audie wrote was there's a bit more scary stuff going on in them. And especially the second movie, I did not, even when I was reading the script, I did not guess who the bad guy was. I was so surprised. And I thought that was pretty great. We really buried the lead. And, you know, on the first one, kind of the same thing, you know. We all think it's going to be, you know, the seamstress. I forget what her name was eventually made. We had a different name for her. I'm sorry for that question. I get so excited talking about animation, but Scooby-Doo, yeah, I grew up with him. We had T-shirts. I had a huge poster of Scooby-Doo, but I never worked on any of the TV shows in the 90s because I was, I don't know, working at other studios.
That's brilliant. I mean, like you mentioned, the tone of this new movie, it was really interesting. In regards to your storyboards, do you have a favourite character to create scenes for?
I love Velma. I mean, who doesn't? Daphne was kind of fun. She was a bit of a challenge because she was in a really cranky mood in the second movie. So it was kind of fun playing around with her posture without making her look too ugly. Scooby is not that easy to draw. Shaggy is a riot to draw. Fred is kind of boring to draw because he's Fred. So on the other hand, I think drawing Scooby and Shaggy together, I have them trying to crawl inside of a candy dispenser machine. So any scene that I got that had both of those guys in there jumping into each other's arms, those were the best, just the best.
That's brilliant. What were some of the scenes that you storyboarded for?
Oh, for Trick or Treat?
Yeah, for Trick or Treat.
Yeah, so I keep calling it the first and second movie because it was my entire life for all of last year. It's all I did, you know.
No, I get why you do that, because obviously titles aren't always confirmed straight away as well. So just
we were overlapping. I was directing the second while I was still finishing up boards on the first movie. So that was kind of fun. And at the same time, and this is completely unrelated, I was also making sets for my own animated feature. So I was like wearing a lot of hats. But towards the end, of course, all I was doing, like eating, sleeping, directing the haunted high rise, get up at 8, log in. Anyway, the scenes that I did, it's the gang exploring the factory. And then the other one, I forget her name. Yeah, Bex. Is that what they eventually called her?
They called her Coco Diablo in the end, right, JayBee?
Yeah, that's right. We had her, she was it's like a working title on a movie, and at the last second they change it, you know, it's so we called her Bex. So I did her introduction when the gang captures her and turns her into the police. And then I also did the factory scene where the gang goes in and explores it. And that's the one I wanted to share with you, just because I feel like it's more cinematic. I love doing the acting as well, but just about every board artist on the Scooby Doo movies are brilliant at acting and all that. But some of them were coming from TV. So putting in dynamic backgrounds wasn't exactly in their wheelhouse. And so it was fun to mentor a few people and you know, I said, draw it so you feel like you're going to get vertigo, you know, don't make it look high, make it look terrifyingly high, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So you can see that?
Yeah.
All right. Yay. All right. So this is when the gang, you know what, I think I'm going to pitch it in. I've run through this a couple of times and I think it'll work better just in this format. Only because it's such a long scene that kept pixelating between each panel. So we started a dark screen and the doors slowly open and we reveal that we're inside a sewing factory. And then we see the gang with their shadows come in and then a flashlight comes around. And this was really fun to do, you know, to have a reveal with the flashlight, because this is 2D animation and we had to be really smart with the way we were animating it because people were going to have to draw it. This isn't CG where the light is just going to come from a source and somebody can just light it. So we had to figure out the animation in 2D to make these scenes work. And of course, they start creeping in. And I wanted to give kind of a good depth, but still the proscenium staging that we know and love. And of course, you can see Shaggy and Scooby are wearing pumpkin costumes and they look ridiculous the whole movie. And then he bumps into someone who starts lurching at him and he freaks out. And then somebody else lurches at him, a mummy, and they're all freaked out. And this is fun too. It's being able to put motion blur into the panels so the animators know to do the same thing. And then of course, Velma comes in and shows that it's just mannequins inside this costume factory. And not what they thought they were. So Fred comes in and Shaggy just says, Scooby says, yeah, we were just practicing for the real ghouls who are probably close by. Maybe we should split up and look for clues. They always do this. Really? You mean it? Whatever keeps us moving. These guys are starving, remember? They want to be trick-or-treating and getting candy, and then Scooby sees something over our left-hand shoulder. And it goes doink, doink. And we do a moment of the candy machine. Oh, yeah, no question about it. Let's split up. And then they do the little fast run in the middle of the air and then zip out. And then Velma says, do you hear that? and they come over to the break room, and then they see the ghouls inside, and the ghouls go through, you know, they're arguing as they play fish, and then these ghouls are like cheating and looking at each other's cards. So in some cases, the boards can stay really rough. They hadn't finalized the character designs for this yet, so we were able to take some liberty. Meanwhile, and it's shots like this that I love, is putting the camera inside the machine, and then little close-ups of stuff. And it starts to slide down, and they look really happy. And then, of course, it gets stuck, because of course it does. Anyway, I could go on, but I think you guys get the idea, right?
I mean, I'll never like put an end to this like on purpose. Like, this is absolutely incredible. Like genuinely, that is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is incredible.
Bex was really fun to draw. She was sweet. She had long hair. She was super cool, very emotional. Her cat was a riot. I mean, whatever they had, Coco, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But, and then I got to board the moments where Velma's holding the box of Scooby snacks, and she sees Bex for the first time, and just lets her arm go slack, and all the Scooby snacks go onto the floor, and then you pull back and you see that Scooby and Shaggy are eating them. So it was fun staging the gags and the, you know, little emotion parts and gags as well. So it was really a pleasure working on Scooby Doo.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. And I know that animation's quite different from live action, and that a lot of the things have to be, you know, predetermined beforehand. Like, you don't get much in the way of deleted scenes. But were there any storyboards that you did for Trick or Treat that ended up like not being used, or like the sequences were ended, you know, they ended up being scrapped last minute?
Yep. Yeah, we were running really long. I think we had like 105 minutes at one point. We had to cut out 15 minutes of the moving. So yes, there were some scenes that got boarded and then chopped, and it was disappointing, because it was disappointing for the board artists who had come up with this whole gag sequence, and we had to drop it. We had to find appendages that we could lop off and still keep the movie ambulatory, if you will. So it happens on, like when I was boarding on Freebirds, did I mention this to you? I can't remember. When I was boarding on Freebirds, I spent 3.5 months on one sequence that I knew in my heart did not belong in the movie. And it did ultimately get cut, but it is sitting in my portfolio because it's mine. It didn't go in the movie. I'm not stealing from anybody. And it's one of my most favorite things that I ever boarded, is a turkey running around a farmhouse trying to find a way out. And it's pretty hilarious. But I knew it didn't belong in the movie.
I mean, that is a shame.
It happens. On TV shows, if the thing is locked and loaded on TV shows, 22 minutes, little bits and pieces get edited here and there, but on a movie it was written long, and we knew we were going to have to trim off 15 minutes. It's a lot of minutes.
And do you recall what some of the deleted Trick or Treat scenes entailed at all?
On Trick or Treat?
Yeah.
I don't think Trick or Treat had any scenes cut out of it. It was the Haunted High Rise that did, and we had a lot of songs, and the songs were amazing. But they took a while, to board out and play out and to set up. So we wanted to give the lead-in scenes in and out of those particular sequences more love than some of the gag sequences. So we cut out some gag sequences in that.
Well, that's understandable. And I guess the last question that I have about Trick or Treat, I guess before diving a bit deeper into Haunted High Rise, is just, when Trick or Treat did come out, it went viral, like, a lot of the other Scooby-Doo movies haven't lately. And obviously, there's that kind of groundbreaking revelation about Velma, but also, like we were saying, you look at the last 10 movies that we've had, kind of not taking away from them, but Trick or Treat definitely stood out as being particularly good. And so did you, at that stage, get to hear any of the positive reactions and just the nature of how viral it went when it came out?
I did. There was a lot of hype on it, but also I think the cleverness was in the script. So when we cut a trailer of it, you could tell it was funny. And what Audie did was he paid homage. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Homage. I always want to say it in the Monty Python way. Homage. He paid homage to all of the villains from every Scooby Doo TV show. And the character designer matched them. We would pull up the original, Audie was directing that. So they'd pull up the original character. They'd pull up the original colors, and then the character designer and the art director would try to match them as closely as possible. And so devices and villains, it was just such a huge homage. Trick or Treat wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. Trick or Treat was spraying it with gold and putting cupcake sprinkles on it and hugging it. It was that kind of an amazing experience.
And that's exactly how it came across. It was certainly like, it felt like a movie that was by the fans for the fans. It was done with so much respect to every Scooby medium that was already out there, and it was stunning. It genuinely was. And I'm excited to move on to some questions about Haunted High Rise, because it wasn't long after we said we'd love to see all these people do a second movie, because the first one was done so well, that we learned there was meant to be a second one. So how did that come about? I think you kind of explaining this to us before we started recording. So you'd all already kind of been brought in for two movies, was that correct?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They were doing what they call a twofer. It was the TV department is getting more into long form now that streaming is. It used to be direct-to-video, like the TV department would also do direct-to-video because they're not necessarily technically feature, but these were features. They're just long form from the TV department. So to be able to work a budget to be able to do both of these, it was bring on a crew and just have them do two movies at once. So we finished, as we're finishing up one movie, the board artist would peel off of the first movie, and then I would start launching them onto scripts and script pages, figuring out how to cast people. So I think we had 10 board artists, and some were good with comedy, some were good with emotion, some were good with staging, some were good with cinematic. One guy in particular was just amazing with chase sequences. So it was fun to launch people and cast people. It's not just, here's the next section of the script. It was to be able to find standalone sections and characters that they could continue to play out through the movie. There was a whole bunch of sequences that happened in the haunted ballroom. So I gave it to one board artist in particular, because we were going to continue revisiting that area. And once he got to know the geography of the ballroom and the different characters, then it was just a no-brainer to make him do all 4 of the sequences.
I mean, it was so great to see such a talented team come together, and like we
they were really amazing. They were really amazing. We made each other laugh. We came up with gag ideas, and just everybody was just a delight to work with.
That was amazing. And so was this we've researched on IMDb, but I'm going to ask this to make sure I've got it right. So was this your debut as director of animation, or had you already directed previously?
This is such a sad answer.
Sorry.
I've directed up to this point 5 features. One was canceled, so that's Scooby Doo. The Tinkerbell franchise, I was replaced with a male director because John Lasseter has a very difficult time letting women finish anything. I was directing something called Oldzilla, which was shelved because it ultimately came down that China cannot make a Godzilla movie because Japan owns the IP. So, but it was a riot to work on. I have so many Godzilla posters in my office. And the 5th one is the one that I'm currently directing right now. There's not enough women directors in Hollywood. And because I kept having projects either get shelved or canceled or replaced just once, I decided to make myself a director. And that's why I've directed a stop motion animation feature, which is now complete. I'm working with a composer right now. A composer and somebody who's, and an agent, so I can get into the festival circuit. So, Yeah, that was going to be my first directing credit. So to find out that it got shelved, I'm like, not again, but it happens.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
More
as you-
so like now, like with the Scooby movies, because even the people that were directing Holiday Haunt, it was their first time as directors as well. So the whole world of Scooby has kind of taken a hit this year. It's bad.
But as you mentioned, I mean, I know it's been shelved, but there's still hope for it to come out. You mentioned the Hex Skills, and it just sounds incredible. But at what point did you actually find out the movie was going to be shelved?
Joe called me. Joe called me and said, has the studio been in touch with you? And I said, no. And this was, I think, at the beginning of October. And he said, oh, well, somebody should be reaching out to you. I'm afraid it got shelved. And it's a financial decision. And I think Warner Brothers is getting a tax credit for shelving it and canceling it. So it's dead. I think because of the merger with Discovery, they just took a look at everything that was going into streaming, everything that was going to be going to HBO Max, and just threw a red line through everything. Figured out how much they'd spent. And do you know, the saddest part is it would have cost the same to shelve it as it did to make it, because it was already locked picture ready for animation. And that was another reason for them doing the two movies back to back, is they had an animation studio they could be feeding work to. But it just, I don't know. It seems so sad since it's so close. But I do not understand the politics or how financial decisions at Warner Brothers get made, but I'm not really sure they're going to resuscitate this. My producer keeps saying, I just don't think, he doesn't think it's going to come back to life, but maybe, who knows?
How far along was the movie into production?
Locked picture, production dialogue, all the songs were recorded. It was ready for animation.
Oh gosh, that's
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, I can't believe that. I mean, like, on top of everything, it's just, I mean, it
Especially
is
since
crazy.
they were brand new. These were brand new Hex Girl songs, and then we had another character who also sang. The songs were just amazingly hilarious and extreme. We had a board artist who did the bad guy song sequences that were just it's like psychedelic mushrooms. Not that I've ever done them, but he spinning cameras, pushing in through the characters, eyeballs and out the other side. It was kind of a riot and a little scary.
I mean, it's definitely something that all of us here would love to see, and no doubt everyone watching this would want to see. But I guess if it is fated to be in the void for the foreseeable future, like, I guess, what could people, as far as you're allowed to say, of course, what could people have expected to see from Haunted High Rise?
The Hex Girls. The Hex Girls back on stage with new songs.
I feel like that's all people need. Like, as soon as you say the Hex Girls were there, it's kind of like, that's it, we want it.
Yeah, lots of chases, a little more emotional stuff on Velma's part. Daphne going through a hissy fit. There was some really fun stuff in there that I probably can't give away, because maybe they'll do it again in another movie.
And in terms of all the stuff with the Hex Girls, did you have like the names of like all the tracks and stuff? Like, was there perhaps going to be a soundtrack release of some sort? Like,
I don't know. I would not know. I'm not really sure how they do those things. Probably.
Gosh, it's certainly something that we're all hoping to see, because the Hex Girls returning is something that everyone's wanted for a long time. There's not been a single movie they've done that has the Hex Girls in it that's not been incredible and made it into people's, top 10 Scoobies. So it is such a shame. But do you have a favorite memory from working on Haunted High Rise?
I'd like 1,000 favorite memories of working on Haunted High Rise. It was the caliber of the script. I keep taking my hat off to Audie Harrison. His writing is just brilliant. And I've worked on a lot of animated scripts, This one was pristine. It was funny. It was to the point. It was so easy to hand out to board artists because we weren't trying to figure out what the motivation behind any of the scenes. There was some really great gags. And as I said, very cinematic. I mean, a motorcycle chase through the hallways, which I would never in a million years want to draw, but we had a board artist who did, and he just did a great job with it. It was kind of hilarious doing the voiceover recordings on Zoom and getting to meet Shaggy and Scooby. The fun, actually, of my favorite memory of that is a very personal one too. We had to record scratch voices for the animatic while we played it back and built the reels before we had the production voices. So my son, who's 25, did the voice of Shaggy. And I got to do the voice of Velma, and we did in 3-hour sessions. We did table reads where we would just basically act out the lines so that the editor was able to record them and cut them into the footage. So for about 2 months, anytime I saw animatics that I was helping edit, I got to listen to my son's voice doing Shaggy, and so I had no idea he was so good.
Well, that does sound amazing. Oh, there seems like there's so many amazing moments for you when working on that movie. And we really do hope that it's something that we're all going to be able to, see and share soon. I mean, not too long ago, Amazon did list Haunted High Rise as a movie that was going to be available from the 1st of October 2023. Do you know if that was the kind of intended release date, or the fact that Amazon has listed it? Do you think that could show some kind of change or progression or anything?
It's funny you ask me that, because the reason why we're talking is I think you have somebody who follows you or knows you ask me the same question in a DM on Instagram. And that's when I found out that Mary had done an interview and that you guys had interviewed her. And so that's when I think I reached out to you guys, or he reached out for me or something. And yeah, he sent me the link, and he seemed so sure that it was because Amazon had a spot for it, that it was, a product was going to show up there. And I am so sure that they just build these, and then if nothing shows up, it just lives on the internet. So it's not a guarantee at all. I think it's just somebody in marketing created that spot where it was eventually going to get delivered. It's just like a link. It's a link to nowhere, really. It's like an empty room in a video game. It's just there. Nobody's in it. Nobody's coming to it anytime soon. So no, I don't think that means that it's going to show up.
I mean, like you just mentioned, ever since we released the interview with Mary J. Hoffman, many people said they wanted to see Haunted High Rise. What was your response to support? Are you hopeful, or yeah, it's strange.
No, I immediately texted my producer and said, so did we all sign an NDA? How much can I share about this? He goes, yeah, we all signed an NDA. And I went, oh, darn it. But I think, we can use it. I'm sure the board artists can use it as portfolio material. I mean, if a project gets canceled, they still did the work on it. But I don't know. I'm not in the loop at all on the fate of it. I just heard it from, the producer's mouth that it's just black armband time, if you know what I mean. The black armbands people wear when there's a death.
Oh gosh.
I know.
Well, based on the support from Treat Scooby Doo, hopefully it's no doubt that this movie will be released, because there was that much response to it. I think we can all agree that we really enjoyed the movie, and we're excited to learn the new direction with more emotion from Velma, and of course the Hex Girls. But also, speaking about other future projects, we understand you're currently directing a stop motion feature, which you've mentioned. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, what can I tell you about that? Everything, anything. I can answer any question. I started doing stop motion about 8 years ago. Yeah, 2014. I was posting found object art that I was into at the time, and I found a little stop motion app and started moving them around and posting them on Instagram. And then I started adding characters, and then I came up with plots and more characters and little plastic space bunnies that steal things and piss people off. And I ended up with such an array of characters, I thought, and 60,000 people follow me on Instagram, which has the numbers dropped after I stopped producing 5 times a week. But then the algorithms have been harsh on many people. Anyway, I thought I should do something with this. And again, the Godzilla movie I was directing at the time had just gotten shelved. And I thought, why don't I just make an animated feature and just make myself the director? So I hired a DP. I made all the sets, wrote the script, created all the characters. I mean, that's basically what my Instagram account is. It's all my stop motion, but on my YouTube channel, I've been posting clips of the entire movie here and there. And so it's fully shot at this point. I used my garage as a film studio. Along the way, Trader Joe's took notice of me. It's a large grocery store chain in the United States. So now I do their social media, stop motion social media for them, very Monty Python, Terry Gilliam kind of stuff. It's basically their designs from their products and bags that I print out and move around flat. So it's flat collage stop motion. And just made an animated feature. And it was way more work than I would ever have thought, because I had to learn new programs, get a new camera, and the sets are super elaborate. But my director of photography, who's from Germany, and he flies over to shoot, it's just the look of picture and the production quality is unbelievable. It's so beautiful. I'm working with a composer right now, so we're getting it finished hopefully by the end of the year, early January, and then I'm taking it on the festival circuit. So I will be posting updates on my Instagram account and my YouTube channel.
Oh, that's
also
so exciting.
I make every single year I make a Cheese Man short for Christmas. So my annual Cheese Man short will be coming out, I think, at the end of the week. I'm working with a virtual assistant who's helping me buy some ads on YouTube and on LinkedIn so that I'm able to send it to more people in the industry in a more responsible and organized way than just sending them a YouTube link. But that will be coming out soon too.
Oh, that is incredible. So I guess, like, because there's a lot coming out on your social media platforms, like, where can people, keep up with that and follow the progress of all of this? Ooh.
Bowling for Rhinos. You can find you can find Bowling for Rhinos on YouTube. You can find Bowling for Rhinos on Reddit. You can find Bowling for Rhinos on Instagram. I just don't think I have the energy to join TikTok.
No, I mean, even JayBee, you don't have the energy for TikTok, do you?
I struggle with it, but I'll definitely
try.
I'll definitely be sure to leave all of those links in the description down below. And of course, us personally, we're excited to see what happens with everything. So that's all the questions that we have today. Just again, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show today. And I guess thank you so much for all the work that you did on Trick or Treat Scooby Doo and Haunted High Rise. That it's just absolutely incredible, because your whole career has truly impacted our lives. So we can't wait to see what you do next. And thank you so much.
It's so sweet of you to say that. And thank you for researching my IMDb. I always forget I've done stuff, Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone for watching another episode. You can catch up with us at JayMilly Vids on all social media platforms, and Sophie at Scooby for Life. I'll leave all of those links in the description down below, so please make sure to keep up with all of that. And if you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.